empowered people make informed decisions that lead to living a life without regret. This is Sarah Kaki and Shauna Woods from Atlanta Divorce Law Group, and this is the Happily Ever After Divorce podcast. Welcome to the Happily Ever After Divorce podcast. This is Sarah Kaki with Atlanta Divorce Law Group, and I am joined by our very own managing partner, Shauna Woods. Shauna, we are going to discuss a very common family law issue today, which is parental alienation. But the specific niche of the topic that we want to address is the question of, are you alienating your child or are you protecting your child? I think there are certain circumstances where that is a gray, fine line that parents walk on. Before we dive deep, could you educate everyone on what is parental alienation and how do the courts define it?
Absolutely. So basically, parental alienation is the intentional display to the child of unjustified negativity aimed towards the other parent with the intention, right? The strategy is to damage that child's relationship with the other parent. We see this in extremely acrimonious divorces.
Yes.
Right? When the anger that you feel towards each other is so palpable that you want that child on your side, right? There's a common theme that I would hear is, my child deserves to know the truth. And then they would tell their version of the truth to that child. That child could be 9 years old.
Right.
And, they're basically coming in to make sure that they have this emotional attachment to the child and that the other person doesn't. So that the child wants to be with the person who's alienating, right? And they gang up on the other parent. It can be unintentional that it happens,
right?
But the very act of parental alienation is an intentional one, even though you may not call it alienation. Right. It is co-opting your child's feelings towards the other parent instead of just allowing them to have their own feelings.
This really, parental alienation gets to the core of what can be so damaging in divorces when work hasn't been done before you choose to get divorced.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is I know I'm on this pedestal and I talk about the, not pedestal, but this soapbox, and I keep mentioning this work all the time. But here's what I want to keep saying, and I want to really bring it home because it's on our mission. If you don't do the work before you choose to get divorced, meaning you don't do the self-discovery of, who am I? What do I want? Why is this marriage working for me or not working for me? How can I make this marriage work for me and work for my spouse and work for my family? Through therapy, through coaching, through personal development, through reading, through taking self-responsibility and really diving deep into how you're showing up and giving the opportunity for your spouse to also do the work. And then getting to that critical point of saying, you know what? I've cleared my conscience. I've done everything I can. This is the next best thing. Until you do that, the causes that lead to the divorce come from a lot of years of probably anger, resentment, bottled up issues that then is boiling over into this divorce process. And you're using the divorce process to heal something when the divorce process is not at all meant to do that. And one of the worst ways this boils over is the impact to the children. And we tell this to our clients all the time. And we send away people who are seeking divorce without having done the quote unquote work on themselves and on their marriages. You are either going to end up in a very conflict-oriented marriage because there's a lot of self-work or healing that you haven't done from within, or you haven't yet gained that clarity that you are ready to go, emotionally ready to go. And until you are going to use this divorce process for retribution. And that's when you're seeking the judge or the court to say you were a good wife, a good mother, he was a bad husband, a bad father, and you win and he loses, or vice versa. But you're not going to get that.
Yeah.
And you're just going to get a lifelong of regret and anger and keep dealing with that. And when you don't get that and it becomes more vivid that you're not getting that from a source, God help you and your children, because very often we see parents going to get that validation that I was the good parent. I was the one that sacrificed for the family. He was the bad guy, or she was the one that walked out on us, from the children.
Absolutely. I call that, and I think this terminology is used often, emotional incest.
Oh, yeah, that's a good word.
When you are using your children, your minor children, to validate your own feelings, to your own need for approval. Right. You're using them as you would in your friendships, as in your partnerships. That's not what you should be doing when your children are young, right? That is not their role. Their role is to be protected by you. And we do see it very often when someone feels hurt by the other person leaving the relationship. They weren't ready for that relationship to be done, so they probably haven't done the work, right? They haven't done the self, discovery that they need to. And they do it, one, because they're angry at the other parent and they want to punish them. Or two, because they have such a need for that emotional connection. And you're right, that validation of, I was the good one. Tell me I was the good one. And let's tell them they were the bad one. It's very insidious in a lot of ways.
It's not usually that crystal clear.
No, it's not. I'm laying it out as you're very black and white, but it's not. Because you are going through the pain, and kids see things, okay? We can't stop them, especially if you're having fights in the home or if there's silence in the home, and children are very perceptive. They often pick up on the fact their parents are not happy, right? And they understand and know. But it is a very fine line we walk in acknowledging what they've seen and acknowledging what was done and then turning it on the other parent. Because there are always two sides to the story.
Absolutely.
Right? And we always, ownership, right? And how did you show up and how did you help your child? Because that's one of the things the courts really look at is, can you facilitate a relationship with the other parent?
Right.
Yeah. Is that the mature part of it?
And how much are you trying to mitigate the conflict?
Exactly. I was an only parent. I did not have any other. People say, oh, you were a single mom. I was like, no, I was the only parent there. I didn't get every other weekend off, guys. So for me, even in that situation, I was extremely careful never to talk negatively about, I don't even call him my daughter's father, because we don't really recognize him as that now because he wasn't involved, but her biological father. Because when you do that, and I'm sure I've said this before and I will say it again because it's so important, when you are saying your father, your mother is insert bad word here, an asshole, a bitch, all these words that people do say to each other and in front of their kids. You've just told your child you're half of that too.
Yeah.
Right?
And the child usually sees himself as an extension
of the parents. Yeah. Absolutely. And so when you do that and you're speaking negatively about the other parent, they don't want you to see them negatively. So of course they reject that other parent vehemently. And that's how the parental alienation occurs.
So let's talk through, there's very clear cases that we see of parental alienation where it's either as clear as calling the other parents a bad word, or more passive aggressive, sort of like, well, your father's going to let you do whatever you want, or
how crazy your mom is.
You know how crazy your mom is, or let's see if your dad's going to want to see you this weekend.
Yep. Or I pay child support. Why don't you have new shoes? Is she spending that on her nails?
Yes. Or trying to find out information about the other household.
Absolutely.
Through the child.
Or even as they get older and into teen years. Well, of course they were ridiculous to do that. Those are ridiculous rules.
Right.
Yeah, come over here and stay with me.
Oh yeah, that there's a lot of manipulation that happens to the teenagers when they get to that right to elect.
Absolutely. And if you don't have a united front on how you are parenting and how you are co-parenting, very easily the children can manipulate you too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that situation in which you want that child to reject the other parent, and you're almost gleeful when they do.
Yeah. So these are the more in-your-face parental alienation. There is this gray line that really gets to more the heart of what we want to talk about today. It's the parent who is protecting the child as much as possible from the other parent who might be in a dysfunctional state in their life, who may have an abuse problem, or may have a mental health issue, or may be involved with a unhealthy person, or may be living in an unhealthy manner. And they are now sort of stuck in a parenting plan with this other parent. And, you know, we talk a lot about children deserve to hear the truth. We should have open conversations with our children. We should be honest with our children. And I see a lot of our clients that are good parents and are working really hard to get it right and really don't want to get in the way of their child's relationship with the other parent. But there is certain times where they feel like, can I say something? Can I do something to protect my child from going into that home? If I know that there may be potentially illegal activity going on in there, or if I know that he might be has a girlfriend that has an alcohol problem and she might be driving with my children, or they watch very inappropriate things in that house, or there's other older children in that house that expose my child to the wrong things. And you have this parental agreement. And how do you navigate that? How do you navigate not getting accused of parental alienation, yet protecting your child?
It is so difficult. And I have several cases right now, and I've had so many cases over the years in which the children really do need to be protected from one of the parents. You're right, addiction is one of the issues. And it's hard because at what age do we say, mom's got an addiction issue?
Right.
And if she starts acting this way, you kind of need to let me know. Right. Or at what age do we feel comfortable saying, if mom's sleeping all day, you kind of let me know.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a fine line. You don't want to be prying into what's going on at the other person's house, but you also want to protect your child, especially if most of our parenting agreements now, there's extended parenting time on the non-custodial time. Right. We have gone from a Friday to a Sunday, which was archaic, to a more usually like a Thursday night to maybe a Monday morning, so that they have school time and bonding time. And
non-custodial means the parent that the child doesn't live with is not their primary residence. Right. We see these, and instantly I will tell you that, you know, you do get, especially when people are deep in their addictions or deep in their mental issues, immediately telling them, oh, they're turning the kids against me. You know, they're using the kids against me. And it is something to be very concerned about, because the court's looking at snapshots, right? And parental alienation is a buzzword, right, that a lot of people use that is not always accurate. So it is an extremely fine line, I think, that we have to watch. But honestly, documenting what's going on in these situations is extremely important. What I mean by documenting, you could be keeping a journal, right? A lot of times it's teachers who are going to pick up on something going wrong in somebody's household, right, before anybody else does, because they know when they come from mom's house or dad's house, something's different, something's off. So as I was saying, yes, it's obviously a fine line to walk. I think that age-appropriate conversations need to be had. But I also strongly suggest that before people have these appropriate conversations with their children, they talk to professionals who know more than they do. Right. Whether that is someone like me,
who can help point them to experts, right? Let's get some of the kids in therapy.
Yeah.
Is one of the first things that I say. Because that therapist is and supposed to be a neutral party. One of the ways I think I can tell, because sometimes it's not even evident to us
Right.
if there's alienation versus protection, right? And it can be a combination of both, honestly.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that I look for is the parent who is protecting willing to have this child go to a neutral therapist? They have their own therapist. That is their safe space, right? And just be open with that therapist and have that therapist give feedback to both parents.
Mm-hmm.
If they are controlling which therapist, if they don't, I really look at alienation when they don't like 3 of the children's therapists because all 3 of them are telling them, hey, don't do that.
Yeah.
That's huge red flags, right? Are you allowing your children to enjoy the other parent as much as they can in a safe and appropriate way? In alienation cases, most of the time what you're going to want to see is the parent who's alienating wants to cut off all contact.
Yeah.
No calls, no visits, no therapy with, no reunification. The parent who's protecting, right, really, really wants to have a co-parent. They love to.
And understand that the child just as much desires a relationship with the other parent as well.
Yes. And you can really perceptively pick up on these differences in that they talk more about, I would love to co-parent with this person. I think they need some help.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If we can get them on SoberLink, or if we can get some testing done, or if we can do something like that, those are the types of things where you think, okay, that's more protection. Right?
Yes.
It's a gut check, right, between protection and alienation.
Yes, and I think alienation is you are trying to receive something from the child, which is your own self-esteem, your own love, your own security as a parent. Protection is you're trying to give the child love, self-esteem, and security.
Absolutely.
And that's probably the gut check. And I think that when you have a child who is inquisitive, and almost all children are, leaving them to process and make sense of what's going on their own is very harmful. So I don't want parents to shy away from having candid conversations with their children because they're afraid of parental alienation. There's just a safe way to do it, which first protect and preserve the love between the child and the other parent.
Absolutely. First
address that. Your mom loves you very much. I know you love your mom very much. What I'm about to share with you does not change any of that. But mom's going through a bit of a hard time right now, as all adults do. So there might be a change of schedule here and there. Or there may be some weekends that you're expecting to be with her, but last minute things might change. Mm-hmm. Instead of leaving the child to make meaning of that themselves, where you're staying silent and then now they have to, because they're constantly trying to process and understand the world around them. Mm-hmm. We are too as adults, but they're doing even more so. And their imagination is very good, and they can build all these stories around why this is happening. And sometimes they internalize it as, oh, mom doesn't want me to be with dad, or dad doesn't want me. And you can actually help not only protect the child, but you can also foster that other relationship by having a candid moment. And I would really just say parental alienation at its heart is what Shauna said. It gets in the way. You're getting in the way and breaking up the child's relationship with the other parent. You're trying to block it. And if you protect the core of that, which is the love shared between that parent and that child, and say, this doesn't change that. There's just some circumstances happening right now, then I don't think anybody could accuse you of parental alienation.
I agree. There is way down the TikTok rabbit hole.
Yes.
And I've seen these videos on YouTube and other places as well, is for some reason parents think filming their children refusing to get out of the car, refusing to go to the other person's house is an appropriate thing to do and is going to prove that this parent's bad. I really think that proves that they are openly engaging in parental alienation. First of all, how dare you film your child in a state of distress
and emotional distress
and put it on the internet?
Yes.
Take a minute, folks, and take a seat and think about that.
That's hard.
Right? And you may not have realized that you engaged in parental alienation, but you can always turn it around.
And that's 100% true. And it takes, again, awareness, choice, ownership, all of our favorite things, and not having a need to be right about the path you've taken this far. I think that's a lot why so many people have a hard time saying, whoa, I was wrong about this, or I've been on the wrong path on this, and they stick their feet down deeper because they don't want to face the truth of saying, I'm going to die by this path, even though it's taking me the wrong one, because I don't want to admit it. So I need to be right about this path I've been on. And
a lot of times people will think if they admit they've done something wrong or they thought something wrong in the past, that the court's going to look at them and go, and you're wrong all the time. In the reality of the situation, in my experience, most judges look at that as a very mature and amazing thing to do, to say, I admit this is a mistake I made. Here's how I learned from it. Here's what I do to make sure it doesn't happen again. I mean, I can't think of any parent that can't say that they haven't made 50 gazillion mistakes every, I don't know how often. Absolutely.
Very often.
Well, none of this came with a rule book. We're trying to create one, right?
Yes. And I think the bottom line is, when you're worried about parental alienation or causing it versus protection, Shauna's words, check yourself. Do a gut check. What is your true intention? Is it really a concern for the child and the well-being of the child, or is it your own validation? All of the psychology books, all of the studies have shown that the well-being of the child is only increased by a healthy relationship with both parents, if possible. So if you want to protect the child and their well-being, you don't want to get in the way of that.
Well said.
Thank you, Shauna. Thanks for listening to the Happily Ever After Divorce podcast. If you'd like to learn more, go to atlantadivorcelawgroup.com/resources.